Now, Emma Wong, Senior Nuclear Technology and Innovation Advisor of the OECD Nuclear Energy Agency, will moderate our Trailblazers in Innovation panel. Please join me in welcoming Emma to the stage. Along with Joe St. Julian, President of Nuclear AtkinsRealis. Dr. Chris Martin, Chairman, Tokamak Energy. Anthony Huston, Managing Director of Core Power. Michelle Brechtelsbauer, VP Strategy, Last Energy. Eddie Saab, President of Westinghouse Electric Canada. Thank you.
Welcome to everyone to the first panel of the afternoon, post-lunch. So I've already had my coffee, so hopefully you've all had some, because I think this is going to be a fascinating panel about the trailblazers in innovation. I had to look up all of these folks. I knew some of them already, but I did have to look them up, and I was very, very excited to be able to actually talk to them on this panel and ask all the questions I wanted to ask. So bear with me as I get to ask these questions. But I'm going to start with Joe here. Joe, you recently introduced a new brand, a new product using CANDO technology. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. So AtkinsRealis just, I guess at the World Nuclear Expo in Paris last week, announced a new large reactor technology that we are going to bring to the market. We call it the Monarch. It's a little misleading because it is in fact new, but it's actually taking existing technology that was developed in Canada starting 70 years ago and just evolving it. It's taking a couple of products that went through the licensing process in Canada and kind of, very technical term, schmoogling them together to get a new full gigawatt scale reactor licensed. You know, and what makes the Monarch a little bit different than the other technologies, there are 6, arguably 7, depending on who you're talking to, large reactor technologies commercially available in the world today. The CANDO reactor is one of those 6 or 7. It first came to market, as I said, 70 years ago, and since that time Canada has built 33 of them. 29 of them are in service today, and it is the only reactor, large reactor, that is a heavy water reactor that uses unenriched uranium. And that is a key differentiation from the light water reactors. All of these products are great, by the way. And all these products, whether it be KEPCO or Westinghouse or the AP1000, or all of these technologies are fantastic, and all of them are needed. I mean, in our estimate, we think that 1,000, when I went to IAEA, they said 1,300 full gigawatt scale reactors need to be built before 2050, and there's not a single company that can build 1,000 or 1,300 gigawatt reactors in the next 30 years. So just maybe real quick, the Monarch is in fact new, but it's really standing on the shoulder of existing technology. We started the actual development of it back in July, announced it last week, and we are working with customers right now on potential purchases, right? So I hope that is a good answer to that question.
I think that's a good answer, but let's go a little bit deeper into that. You talked about this as based on an existing technology, but it is new. But so how did you make that decision to go down this route using an existing technology to make something new?
As with everything, it's really driven by our customers. So the Monarch is a full gigawatt scale reactor, and we did a gigawatt scale using enriched uranium that went through the regulator a few years ago. And then we're putting a heavy water core back into this product, but right now there's the CANDO, we call it the CANDO 6. That's most of the CANDOs in service today are 6 CANDO 6s. They're 650s. But when we talk to our customers are like, I need a full gigawatt scale or bigger. The 650s are interesting. but we're looking for real dense base load. And dense base load needs to be 1,000 megawatts or more. And the 650, although a very proven technology, very reliable, high, capacity factors, everything you want, would I build 4 650s or would I build 4 1000s or 4 1400s or whatever the case may be? And it really has to do with what's the application. Right now, it's really about replacing fossil fuel with base load, clean nuclear energy. And I think the 1,000 megawatt and up is kind of a minimum to be in that game. Don't get me wrong. There's need for SMRs and micro reactors, and there's frontiers where that makes a lot more sense. And there's actually jurisdictions where the can-do 650 makes a lot of sense. But for the large populated cities, base load, 1,000 megawatts. So it was really driven by what do our customers want? What do they need? And that's what ultimately led us to the decision. So.
All right. Well, I love that you're trying to give something that the customers want. So that's a great answer to that. Well, I'm going to pivot now to Eddie. Eddie, you're kind of looking at more PWR technology at Westinghouse. But we've heard about eVinci out there. But what are some of the other key innovations that Westinghouse has deployed or is thinking about also bringing to market?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. It's great to see you again and great to be on the panel with everybody here. I've spent the last couple of days at COP trying to explain who Westinghouse is, and I'm hoping to this audience I don't have to do that. So I thought maybe I'll explain who Westinghouse was. And really, it's the fundamental core of Westinghouse. George Westinghouse was the founder 140 years ago, a serial entrepreneur who created the air brakes for rail. And it was that entrepreneurial spirit and innovation that's really been the catalyst for Westinghouse over the last 140 years, really leading to what we had done back in 1952 with the USS Nautilus submarine, and then commercializing the first reactor technology in 1957 at Shippingport, Pennsylvania. So Westinghouse is doing a lot of, I'd say, the more stereotypical, traditional. We're looking at machine learning, AI, advanced materials, technologies, digital twinning. But I thought for this crowd, maybe I'll talk about maybe 2 or 3 areas that might not be so traditional. One is we're trying to reinvent, innovate within existing technologies, right? So looking at the fleet of 400 reactors around the world, trying to figure out what can Westinghouse do to make them run more efficient. What are the new technologies and materials that can be leveraged, right? So in 2018, we actually used the first 3D printed material in a PWR. So we're trying to also see what can be done existing as opposed to sometimes the cool and fancy and attracts all the attention of the Vinci's, which pays my bills, by the way, and other technologies. But even on the Vinci side of things, that technology was based on proven, previously deployed technology. Mm-hmm. We licensed that from Los Alamos. The challenge and the opportunity for Westinghouse was how do we innovate that small kilovolt type of technology to make it commercially viable, right? And the challenge we had to figure out is how do you manufacture heat pipes from a couple of inches, couple of feet, to 22 feet to be able to come with that. And that's where some of the innovation is being driven to. I'd say 2 other areas we're looking at is on isotopes. Right? So we always talk about power production, heat production, but the industry does a great job of talking about the healthcare side of things too. But the demand for cobalt-60 is increasing incredibly rapidly. The U.S. uses half of the world's cobalt-60 supply, and yet none of it is harvested from the U.S. PWRs. So Westinghouse has been working with Nordion, wow, I just got really loud, to look at how we take some of the technologies they have, work with Westinghouse to be able to harvest cobalt-60 from those PWRs. I think the last one I want to touch on is non-nuclear technology that Westinghouse is working on. So beyond the AP1000, the AP300, the eVinci, we're doing a lead-fast reactor as well. We're looking at long-duration energy storage. Non-nuclear pumped thermal energy storage where we just take oil-infused concrete, we heat up a medium, and we store 100 megawatts of electricity for 10 hours because you couple long-duration energy storage with any of the nuclear technologies on the panel today, and it just complements really what we're trying to do as an industry and as an organization to move forward. So a little bit of old and new, but looking at areas beyond just the traditional AI and other cool things happening in the industry.
Well, that's really neat. I didn't know about your non-nuclear innovations, so that's really interesting. Maybe that could be incorporated into our nuclear new infrastructures that we're building.
Exactly. It's we're looking at making that a combination.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. All right. We started talking now about looking at decarbonization of other sectors. You started mentioning this. So, Tony, I think you talked to me yesterday about some very interesting work that your company is doing looking at the maritime industry. So do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having us here to speak today. Thanks very much. So my name is Tony Huston. I work with Core Power. We are a maritime innovation company that's focused on taking nuclear technology and applying it to the marine industry. So the marine industry is a behemoth. It's global trade is about 20 trillion per year. And the backbone of the global market for trade is shipping. So our idea basically is to apply advanced atomics to floating nuclear power and ultimately propulsion systems to revolutionize the entire trading fleet. So our fleet is about 100,000 ships globally. We consume roughly 350 million metric tons of high carbon fuel per year. Our offtake is about a gigaton of high carbon that sits in the atmosphere and the ocean. We'd like to approach that from an economic perspective. We want to make this an economic reality. We want to make money out of the markets and not just decarbonize. It's not our only goal. We've partnered well with a couple of very large U.S. entities, TerraPower and Southern Company, to prototype the reactors. That'll be happening over the next several years. As we do that, we will then marinize the reactors and try to put them onto vessels that will float and produce offshore power. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, but one of the interesting things you were telling me is you're taking existing type technologies and trying to see where the gaps are to put them together, right?
In terms of...
You see a need in maritime.
Right.
You see technologies out there, and the fastest way to maybe decarbonize maritime is to put nuclear reactors on boats. And you were telling me that, we have navies out there that use nuclear power.
Right, so this is right. As a panel on innovation, the maritime industry has been innovating since the beginning of time. The astrolabe, the compass, the GPS, different types of propulsion systems. We have been through this before. We've been from oars to sail, from sail to coal, from coal to oil. And the United States Navy has been doing this since the 1950s. So it's an old idea that we're renovating with new technologies that are much more applicable to what we're trying to do. So in terms of some of the reactor we're working with, the molten chloride fast reactor looks attractive to us because of its sort of optimum operating characteristics. It's low pressure, ambient pressure. It has a very long fuel cycle. We believe it will be an more easily maintained entity, so we can actually use it in shipping with less people. So it's moving. We're very pleased that our market has accepted what we're trying to do. So from a commercial perspective, I've been in finance my entire career, and we would not have really looked at this unless it was a lucrative endeavor. Right, there are again 100,000 ships that have to be replaced over the next 30 years. These big ships don't last forever. Right, they've got like a 25-year life. So as we see these ships being retired over time, we can very well calculate or calibrate even how many ships we have to build over what period of time, and then mete out how much fuel we have to create. So in terms of a greater ecosystem for the whole support structure, we will see those ships coming offline. We will know how much fuel we have to get and build and make. And the whole financial chain behind it is robust and old. So the way shipping works basically is that you have a pre-described route from, say, Australia to China with coal or ore or whatever it is. You know that route. So the banking structure is fairly simple, right? People talk about the difficulties in financing nuclear power plants. For us, it's fairly simple. We know the route, we know the repetitive structure, we know the credit, we know the off-takers, and we can finance it, right? It's fairly tried and true. the shipping industry is really looking for a transformative technology, as they always are. They want to go faster. They want to go, into more ports. They want to be able to be more autonomous. The synthetic fuel manufacturing issue is interesting. People want to make all these different kinds of fuels, whether it's methanol or LNG or others. There's a lot of complexity involved in that and cost, right? So ironically, once you get the nuclear ships up and running, the port operations are much more simple. So simplicity, economics, long-term viability, we think nuclear is a way to go for the breed industry for sure.
All right, great, thank you. So Michelle, you're from Last Energy. We haven't talked too much yet, so I'm really interested looking at deployment. What do you think some of these challenges would be for deployment, either advanced nuclear and large builds, and all with the goal of decarbonization?
Well, thanks, Emma, and I'm really excited to be here at COP28 representing Last Energy, and it's really great to see so many industry colleagues that I've learned so much from in the past 5 years of working in this sector. Deployment is everything, right? If we're actually going to be able to make the differences that everyone in this room has been talking about needing to make to triple net zero, or to get to net zero by tripling our nuclear capacity, that means we have to start building things. So what Last Energy has been focused on is transforming first our company and ultimately the entire nuclear industry into that vehicle that can actually deploy and deliver and start addressing not just industrial decarbonization, where a lot of the initial focus will come because we have a lot of customer demand in that area, or grid scale decarbonization with the large reactors, but ultimately solving the challenges that were being spoke about in the previous panel before lunch about energy access for humanity. That's really the challenge of our time, and that's the opportunity that nuclear energy offers. So at Last Energy, we kind of go beyond just looking at how can we advance nuclear technology. Nuclear technology is incredibly advanced. It works. Don't change it if it already is working well. So we actually don't do too much focusing on innovating the reactor core. We use standard pressurized reactor technology. We just shrink it down so that we can actually move into productizing nuclear power plants, full nuclear power plants, with the goal of ensuring that we can deliver a nuclear project with, for a specific customer that has electricity or heat demand in a way that can be privately financed, so we can get into this scalability that we're all talking about. So in terms of our full design, in order to do that, we really embrace to the maximum extent the idea of modularity. The majority of our team actually comes from the oil and gas sector and the renewables sector. These are engineers that build things, and they know how to finance things. And so what we're focused on is being able to take those learnings from the nuclear sector in terms of fantastic technology at the core, and then the construction methodologies, rapid manufacturing, and productization of an entire power plant to be able to scale up and meet that demand.
Oh, great. I mean, that's a lot of different innovations there, a lot with process and taking other existing technologies. And so I'm going to go back to Julian before I go to fusion. Don't worry, Chris, I haven't forgotten you, but I want to give you your own time here. But back to Julian, we're talking about like decarbonization and other things, but there are other uses for nuclear as well. So what are some innovative and trailblazing roles does nuclear play in the health sciences sector, and how important is it?
I started in this industry more than 30 years ago, and when I started, there was kind of two things. If you're going to be in nuclear, you were going to build nuclear assets, and those could be nuclear facilities or nuclear power plants, just nuclear facilities in general, or you were going to tear down end-of-life nuclear assets. It's kind of, you did one or the other. I would say starting 10 years ago, this whole emergence, at least in my perspective, in my world, this whole emerging idea of nuclear medical isotopes started to come on the scene, and it's kind of grown. And now it's this whole new area of being in the nuclear industry that really wasn't there when I first started. And then, I came and joined AtkinsRealis 2 years ago, and, obviously knew about medical isotopes and how they were made, and there's a lot of different ways to make them. Some of it's kind of extracting it through ion exchange columns and all kinds of different resins and all that kind of stuff. And I learned that the CANDU reactors, these heavy water reactors, they are pressure reactors, but they're designed in a way where you can drop a target into the reactor itself, and you can irradiate an isotope to a specification, and that isotope can be removed after a set period of time, and it can be used, for a very, bespoke and specific purpose. And so, in the Monarch design, and even in the reactors that are in service today, we are making medical isotopes. We are making them at Bruce Power. We are making them at OPG, at Darlington, and the Monarch reactors that we are going to build here in the future will also have that capability. It's the only technology that allows you to actually make a medical isotope at the same time you're actually making electricity, right? So it makes it kind of unique, right? It's a differentiation in our product line. So medical isotopes is becoming hugely important and advancing all kind of new frontiers in medical that I don't even understand because I'm not a doctor, right? I'm a nuclear guy. But, I think this is a really phenomenal kind of use case for nuclear. I mean, people think of nuclear as it's electricity and you have to deal with the waste and, is there a social license? But if you understand it all, you start realizing there is a lot that comes from nuclear other than just, good, clean energy. There's also this byproduct nuclear medical isotopes. And I think it's a great frontier for what we're doing in this room and across the industry. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that's one of the lesser known things in the public is that nuclear reactors could do this too. And so that's a great message. Chris, I told you I wouldn't forget about you. You're on here, the only fusion person I have on this panel, so you get a special question. What are the significant milestones that need to be achieved for fusion to become a commercially viable energy source?
Thank you, and good afternoon. It's wonderful to be back here in the UAE, one of the most energy-intensive places on the planet. And we were hosted at Khalifa University earlier this year to run a fusion week, and it's really, to me, inspiring to see the sophistication in which the UAE looks at not just energy today, but energy in the future and how energy is going to fit into society. I think if you think about fusion, all the energy in the universe started as fusion energy. Mm-hmm. Even the gas in the gas wells here is as a result of fusion. And you get fusion by combining two light nuclei together, typically hydrogen, to form helium, releasing enormous amounts of energy. So the question is, why haven't we been doing this for years? The object lesson is up there in the sky, reminding us every day. And it's because you need the temperatures and the pressures and to hold the nuclei together for long enough to get fusion to happen. And it's been a challenge for decades, for 50 years, to actually get this to happen. And really the big breakthrough, the founders of Tokamak Energy, who frankly I think were completely crazy at the time because this was 13 years ago, thought that you could make high-temperature superconducting tape, which was a very esoteric material back then, into magnets. And they did that. They did it in a typical mad inventor fashion of kind of winding tape around wooden formers and built the first demonstration of a spherical tokamak with high-temperature superconducting tape, a thing called the ST25. And really that is the key breakthrough that needs to happen in fusion. In order to hold 100 million degree plasma of burning, we say burning, it's not burning, but fusing gas together, and to hold it together for thousands of seconds to create a commercial device, you really need this dense magnetic field, very stable, very robust, operating, a few centimeters away from something which is over 100 million degrees. And we've made that breakthrough now. So I think the Joint European Tour has demonstrated that you can create a lot of energy. They created 22 megajoules in a 10-second pulse in a copper magnet device. They had to stop it because the copper gets too hot. So I think, people always think that fusion's miles out there and very risky. It's actually had very little investment made in it. If you look at the amount of money invested in fusion today, it's less than in a large deep offshore oil field. But now with this key innovation of high-temperature superconducting magnets and the ability to control those magnets with advanced model-based control systems, that really has been the key breakthrough.
So what do you think the next one needs to be?
The next challenges, to make it an attractive commercial device, you have very high heat fluxes. You're taking a lot of heat out. You need to do it in a way which protects the magnets, protects the guts of the machine. And so you need typically a liquid metal wall, very often a liquid lithium wall, because that way you produce the tritium that you need to fuse with deuterium to have a closed fuel cycle. So I think the areas that need to be tackled, and they're not really scientific breakthroughs, they're engineering developments. The liquid lithium wall, what's known as diverter, it's really the exhaust pipe of the fusion device, where you take enormous heat loads out. It's something akin to the turbine blades in the combustion part of a jet engine, where you run those blades right at the frontier of when the metal would melt by using advanced heat transfer techniques. I think that's the second area. And the third area really is the advanced control, model-based control of these magnets. The thing about the magnets is, if you can imagine, you've got conductors which are literally like if you plucked one of your hairs out, we're putting 2,000 amps through a conductor of that size, and we're winding those into large magnets, meters in diameter. So you can imagine the amount of energy that's stored up if you have a flywheel like that. And if you lost superconductivity, that would just melt at best, blow up at worst. So making these magnets what's known as quench-proof is really a fundamental piece of engineering development and design work. But we've done that. You could build these magnets now, and we build heaters into them so that we force them to lose superconductivity. And even then, it's very hard to make them quench, and when they do quench, they just kind of quietly quench and then come back into superconductivity. So it's an engineering development process, and there's been a lot of talk in this room about the pace of innovation. By tackling these things in parallel, doing the right experiments, learning from the intelligent failures which happen, I'm personally very convinced that by the mid-2030s we'll be demonstrating commercial level fusion devices ready to be rolled out in the latter half of the 2030s.
No,
2030. That seems like tomorrow to me.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing this. I like hearing, though, that it's now becoming more of an engineering problem than a physics problem. So I think innovation is going forward. And as an engineer, that means that maybe there's new opportunities for me as well. Maybe I should look more into fusion. So, all right, now comes the hard questions. They gave me this one, and having come from the U.S. government, I'm always interested in knowing what you all think about, what the role can government policies and international collaboration play. And I'm going to start with Eddie, since we've talked before.
Yep.
So what do you think? And this is going to be for each of you, even Chris. I'm going to ask you this too. So think about it, but Eddie, of course, first.
For the government, I think it's the opportunity to help de-risk, right? A lot of these technologies, these opportunities are first of a kind, and with first of a kind challenges come first of a kind costs and risks that we ultimately have to collaborate on to be successful, right? So strong stable, consistent, predictable policy allows us to understand the objective and the projects we're getting into, and allows us to predict what those costs and challenges might be and adequately fund and partner with it. To the other part of it is, I think partnership is absolutely key. This week we signed an MOU with ENIC, for example. Right? It's very strategic and important to Westinghouse to find capable, knowledgeable partners who have a track record of successfully deploying programs. And in ENIC, we have a partner that, as you can see for all the visitors here the past 7 weeks who have been following the beautiful story of the UAE, the success of the program. So when Avinci was looking for a partner in the region to work, to collaborate, to figure out how to deploy, it made absolutely perfect sense to be partnering up with ENIC to figure out how we work together to deploy Avinci's across the UAE and really across the region, because there are some unique opportunities and challenges, whether it's desalination or maybe for some of the island states. Partners that know the region, know how to succeed, are very important to us, because Westinghouse are really good at designing reactors, and that's our core, right? When you start looking at some of the creative uses for these technologies, that's where it's very important to find those partners who can cooperate, collaborate, and really teach us on what needs to be done to be successful.
Okay, great. And now I'm going to go to Joe, the other developer in the room.
Okay, so let me talk about it from a large reactor perspective.
Okay.
I mean, and so yeah, Eddie's talking about it from a small reactor, micro reactor perspective, maybe a little broader than that. But the way that I think about it is, you know, I explain to people as an OEM, this is an original equipment manufacturer that owns its own intellectual property and is required to keep that technology current and evergreen over time. I don't sell nuclear power plants to utilities, really. And what it really is that I actually work with the government, who actually owns the intellectual property of the CANDU, and that government goes shoulder to shoulder with me to sell a nuclear technology to another government that works shoulder to shoulder with a utility, a local utility. So it's really a G to G, B to B dynamic. It requires all four. And so what role does government play? Well, government plays a huge role in large reactor technologies. It's not only the regulation, and it's also the financing, it's the backstopping, it's the sovereign guarantees of technologies. These things are crucial to actually building large reactors. Even if it's domestic or I should say at home or abroad, government plays a huge role. Couldn't be done without a government, to be honest. Maybe someday it could be, but I don't think that day is in the near future. That said, I think SMRs, you know, could lend themselves to non-recourse finance, and certainly microreactors and all of those kind of things, and the backstops and nuclear indemnifications that come with all of that. I think there's a real possibility. But on large reactors, critical, essential role for government. I'll tell you one other thing I'll add here is I was on a panel earlier this week with the CEO of Westinghouse, and the same question was asked, and he gave an answer that I thought was actually pretty good. So I don't want to take credit for this answer. I want to give credit where credit's due. And he said, look, what we need the government to do is to maybe, instead of drip feeding a whole different bunch of technologies, there's 75 SMRs on the market today. We know that only, less than 10 are going to survive. But governments are financing these great ideas, and rather than fail forward and fail quick, it's not allowing the market to consolidate. And so his advice to government was, be more focused, right? You have to really, you can't fund everything and every dollar you put into it, which helps, which is essential for moving these things forward. Should be really focused, just like we run businesses, right? You have to be focused. If you try to be everything to everyone, you're probably not going to be successful. And so I think, even though I say government is essential, government also has a leadership role to play in these things as well. So that's my answer.
That's a pretty good one. Even if you have to give credit to another CEO. That's okay.
No, it's fine.
Now, Tony, I want to ask you, what do you think government, what role do they play in the Marines?
It seems like you can't do nuclear without the government. I mean, you have to have them, right? I mean, that's their controlled domain. And we're happy to have them, frankly. The competence level is very high. The labs are fantastic. I mean, they're diamond labs. INL and the other labs that we have worked with are fantastic. The facilities, the capabilities, the long sort of horizon look at the importance of the technology to bring it to fruition is very important. The government, we hope, will be, for our product, the marine product, one of the first off-takers, possibly. But to push government agencies together to collaborate, to get them to recognize the value of what we're doing in the SMR space for the marine side is really important. So we look to them as a partner. We want to make sure that we actually carry more than our weight financially so that we don't go ask them for money, right? We know that there are the ARDP awards and the ARC and all that. That's fine. The grants are good. But our industry can pay for itself. We're paying our own way. So we want to make sure that our involvement with the government is on equal economic or better economic footing. We don't need those strings attached per se. But again, we value the government involvement very much. We know that the regulatory structure is important to have. The stamp of approval is very important. So yeah, we value that. And we speak to people that, our investors are from Japan, and they're very concerned that as long as the United States does it, then they will adopt it, right? No one wants to be first, they want to be first to be second. So as long as it has the US NRC stamp or the US government stamp on it, it has a much higher possibility to be uptaken quickly.
And for the last developer, well, not the last, but Michelle, I have a special question for you before I go back to fusion. So I'm going to turn the question around on you. So what do you think about the advent of the private sector-driven nuclear projects as opposed to the government-led ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think our view on this question is clearly going to be very different, I think, than the answers that have previously been given, and that's really because of our scale and what we're trying to essentially create a paradigm shift, turn the current model completely on its head. Key to that is the business-to-business kind of demand-driven free market approach to nuclear. That's what we're trying to bring to this sector. That's how every other energy technology is developed, aside from nuclear. And we've seen a lot of innovation, and that innovation comes through competitiveness, through free market competitiveness, and ensuring your product has a buyer, has a customer. So the customer for us, we have two customers. One is obviously the energy users themselves. So our sales process is we actually sign power purchase agreements directly with energy users, and we sell them electricity and heat. They don't, operate their own reactors. We operate our reactors, or we will. And our other customer are our financial investors, our project investors, who are looking to make a return on their investment in that asset, in that project. And so what we're essentially trying to do is create a model where by taking on that risk of ensuring the private financing, that we're perfectly aligning incentives to ensure that from the design to the procurement, to the construction, manufacturing, operations, maintenance, and then eventually decommissioning of these power plants, that incentives are aligned across all of the relevant stakeholders, including government, but Last Energy is kind of sitting in the center of that. So governments, what do they want? They want to ensure they're able to meet their targets of net zero, ensure reliable, security of clean energy for their nation, for their citizens. We work with regulators to ensure the safety and security of the assets that we're deploying. We work with the communities as a project developer to ensure that they have something in their communities that obviously brings them benefit, but they are extremely proud of. That's what we're seeing, especially in the markets we're working in now. And then, of course, we work with their financiers to ensure that they're making a return on their investment. So by kind of playing that central role and ensuring that everyone we're considering the objectives of each of those stakeholders and putting government as one of those key stakeholders, but it's not in financing, right? It's in doing what governments do best. Regulatory, permitting, government does not need to be the developer of a microreactor. Government certainly has a major role to play in gigawatt scale projects, but for microreactors, we want governments to be treating us just like they would any other energy technology of comparable size.
Very good perspective. And on fusion, I'm not sure if you have a different or similar, I mean, there's so many perspectives here. So Chris, what is your perspective on?
Yeah, I think there's three very clear roles for government to play in fusion. The first one is regulatory. Fusion doesn't want to happen. Now, if you're not on a star, you really have to struggle to make it. So it's intrinsically safe, it stops. And the UK government and now the US governments really are steering the regulation of fusion to be regulated like any other kind of large chemical factory or something. So not a nuclear regulatory environment, but one's appropriate to the level of risk and the intrinsic safe nature of it. So that's the first one. The second one is public-private initiatives working together, bringing the strength of academic efforts to bear with private companies and public institutions. Examples of this are the STEP program in the UK, the Milestone program in the US, the Moonshot program in Japan, and the German program. So this is really happening around the world now, and also in China. And then the last one, with all of the technologies we've been talking about, not just here, but at this conference, none of them would have got off the starting blocks without a degree of subsidy or at least an off-take guarantee for the nth of a one, the first few devices to run down that initial bit of the learning curve. So those are the three areas.
All right, thank you. Well, that was very succinct. Thank you for that. I agree. It's going to have to look a little different, and I'm glad governments are already looking into it, at least the UK and the US. So, okay. All right, we have about 4 minutes left, and so I have one last question for all of you, and then I'll go down the row so you won't be surprised this time. I promise, and I will start with Joe. And so what do you think the next key breakthrough will need to be in your focus area? Because you all have different areas of focus. I know, Chris, I've already asked you this, but you think of another one. So, Joe, what do you think the next key breakthrough will have to be, or in what area?
Okay, so I'm gonna stick to my theme of large reactors because it's different for different nuclear technologies for sure. For me, it's you have to get your costs down, right? You have to get your levelized cost of electricity has to be competitive to alternatives. And in order to do that, I think the money is made or lost in CapEx in a big nuclear environment in the field, right? It's turning wrenches. And so the key breakthrough is how do you actually build it kind of in a controlled environment, modular construction, to bring your costs down so that you can actually have a low levelized cost of electricity and be competitive relative to other alternative fuels. That's it.
Great. It's a great challenge to the industry. Chris?
I think it's actually something which again applies to everybody here, which is a change of a way of thinking. And I think we had a very useful object lesson with the COVID pandemic and the development of the mRNA vaccines. And the regulatory, the manufacturing, the innovation, the translation across different levels of science. That happened in parallel. It happened in a very unencumbered way, and it was rolled out very safely and very effectively. I think many of us in this room have technologies which can address the challenges that the climate has in front of us. But unfortunately, a lot of the environment in which we work in and people's expectations is set in the kind of days when you used to have mega projects. You developed things in a linear fashion. They took a long time. They weren't necessarily safer. They certainly weren't cheaper, and they certainly weren't more effective. So strangely, I think one of the big innovations which needs to happen is a change of the way of thinking, a change in the way we deliver.
I like that. I like that. Change for the future.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think for our side, the breakthrough is going to be in the serial manufacturing of these for our industry. So when they start to see these things being made in shipyards and put onto floating production or into propulsion systems, you're going to wake up and recognize that this can be done in a very efficient way, modular format, on the water, for fit for purpose structures going forward. And so when they start to see these things rolling out, the reality of them will really sink in. And we'll see a sea change in terms, no pun intended, a sea change in terms of acceptance and then overall adoption.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle?
I think the key breakthrough from our perspective is that we have to be able to prove that we can do it. We've been issued a challenge by 24 plus, hopefully there's a plus there by this point, nations. The industry has signed a pledge saying that we're going to deliver, and now it's time to deliver. I think the key thing that we also have to have in mind is we can't just deliver a little bit. I mean, we have to deliver a lot. So we have to be focusing on scalability from the beginning. We've been hearing about manufacturing and modularity and private finance and collaboration, and I think that we have to all truly do that. I don't think we can let this COP not live up to the challenge that we've been issued. And I think that that's going to be the next breakthrough, is every single person in this room and everyone that we work with, really taking up that mantle that we are going to triple the amount of nuclear power, maybe more than, by 2050, and we all have a big role to play in that.
All right, and last but not least, Eddie.
I'll cheat and build upon Michelle's answer. The AP 1000 is already an nth of a kind, right? The next AP 1000 we sell will be serial number 13, 14, somewhere there. So when I take that idea of proving out what we have to do and look at eVinci, the breakthrough for eVinci will be getting the first one we just sold to Saskatchewan Research Council completed and delivered and operating on time, right? So eVinci's breakthrough is seeing a 5 megawatt microreactor in Saskatchewan in 2029.
All right, so I'm hearing a lot of we just need to do something and change the way we do it to get it done. I can't agree more. And with that, our time is done. So thank you to my esteemed panel. I have learned a lot today and a lot of good key messages. So thank you very much.
Thank you.